Hello and welcome to my February budget recap. We had to make a lot of changes this month as there were a few unexpected things that happened. We are a family of three, and my husband and I work full time, and our daughter is almost a year and a half and goes to daycare full time. We are currently working towards paying off about $500,000 in debt and also trying to save and invest along the way. I will go over the specifics of our debts as I go through that section of my budget recap and talk about what we paid this month. And also, I will go over what our current savings goals are as well. So let's just jump right into our budget recap. Okay, first of all, we do a zero-based budget, so every single dollar gets assigned a job, but we also use a bunch of sinking funds and spend pretty freely from those every month. And so even though we assign certain amounts to our sinking funds every single month, we don't necessarily spend all of that, and sometimes we spend a little bit more, but as long as there's enough in our sinking funds, then that's perfectly fine. So I'm going to start out with our income this month. This is where one of the biggest changes happened. My husband got a raise. Starting with my paycheck, this is my pre-tax pay. So we'll go over all of my taxes and everything that comes out of my paycheck. This is my gross income. But for my husband, this is what actually hits our joint account. It's just easier that way so that I don't have to get him to send me his pay stub every week, because that would be tedious for him. So I brought in pre-tax $10,460.95. That was just about what I budgeted. For my husband, he actually got a raise halfway through the month, and so we had budgeted for him to bring in a little bit over $4,600, but he ended up bringing in $4,952. And then for interest, we have most of our savings in a high yield savings account, but we actually ended up basically draining that savings this month, and I'll go into that when I get into the spending. But we still earned $113.76 from our high yield savings account. That was mostly from before we pulled everything out. And then for rewards, these are our credit card rewards, and we redeemed $50 worth. My credit card just redeems them automatically, and so my husband had made some purchases for work that ended up getting refunded, so they automatically triggered the rewards redemption, and now we're sitting at negative credit card rewards, so it's probably going to be a couple of months before we get any more credit card rewards. We didn't get any refunds this month. We haven't done our taxes yet. We were waiting on a few things. And then for other, we didn't get any other income. We weren't really expecting any either. So now moving on to our savings. I contribute to my workplace 403B. This is one of my pre-tax deductions. I'm contributing currently to the pre-tax, but I may switch that up in the future, because I do have the option of contributing to a Roth. So I might be doing that at some point. But I contributed exactly what I budgeted. And then for our daughter's 529, we have a goal of contributing $5,000 this year so that we can get a state tax break for doing that. So we contributed $415 this month. We plan to do that every month, except I think 1 month we'll contribute a little bit more just to get to that $5,000. For Acorns, this is my after-tax brokerage account, and I just contribute $5 a month, and then I had the roundups turned on. So this month we had roundups occur twice, and so we ended up contributing $16.22 to Acorns, which is about $5 more than we usually contribute, but that's okay. And then my husband's 2024 Roth IRA, we maxed that out in January, And the 2025 Roth IRA, we were planning to max that out this year. We currently don't know if we are going to. We budgeted this month to contribute $585, but some things came up, mostly regarding the HSA, which is a new line item on my budget. My husband was also expecting a bonus. We thought it was going to come in February, but it's looking like it's coming in March, probably. Hopefully no later than that. But we decided that we would apply his bonus to last year's HSA so that we could get a little bit more back on our taxes this year. But he didn't get the bonus, and we decided that we still wanted to contribute to the HSA. So we pulled that money from somewhere else in our budget. But we also didn't contribute to the Roth because when we found out about my husband's raise mid-February and how much it was going to be, and then we found out he was getting a bonus and how much that was supposed to be, we realized that it would put us over the income max for contributing to the Roth. So this year we are going to try to get our taxable income back down below $236,000 so that we are able to contribute to the Roth again. We're going to do this by contributing to this year's HSA, the 2025 one, and then we may increase our pre-tax contributions to our workplace retirement accounts. We may not need to, but that's definitely an option in order to be able to contribute to the Roth again. Now moving on to our fixed expenses. This is where my taxes come out of my paycheck, and that's $2,806 came out. It's a little bit less than what we budgeted for. I think I estimated that I pay about 28% in taxes, but it's a little bit less than that. Life insurance also comes out of my paycheck each time for a total of about $7. This gives me 3 times my salary of life insurance. Every year I can increase it by another year of salary. So I just started that, I think, 2 years ago. So you can't increase it by more than 1 year at a time every year. So I think I didn't start increasing it until 2 years ago. I'm only at 3 times my salary. But 2 years ago, I didn't need life insurance because I didn't have my daughter. Moving on to utilities. This is our electric only. We're on budget billing, so every month they bill us the exact same amount, regardless of what we use. We've been using a little bit more, so I'm expecting this bill to go up in the near future. I was looking back, and they increased it sometime last spring, I think from like 128 to 184. So maybe in the spring we'll see that increase. We typically don't use quite as much electricity in the fall and the spring just because most of our electric usage comes from running the heat in the winter and running the pool pump in the summer. Next, we have our internet. We pay $29.99 a month for this. It's going up next month by $5, and there's really not much we can do about it. We have the lowest price and the lowest speed of internet that's available in our area, so this is really the best that we can do. It's just basic internet. We don't have TV or anything. And then daycare, we pay $300 every Monday. We had 4 Mondays, so we spent $1,200 on daycare this month, which was exactly what we budgeted. And then my only subscription is my Acorns account, my after-tax brokerage, and that's just $1. However, they didn't draft it by the end of the month, so I'll probably be paying $2 for that in March for the February subscription. All right, now moving on to our debts, we have our mortgage. This is $2,675. I rounded up a tiny bit just to make it that nice even number. So I'm paying, I think, like 27 cents extra towards principal. But this will be going down next month because I got the private mortgage insurance removed. So I think next month we're paying $2,630 for the mortgage, which will save us a little bit more in our budget. I am thinking I might remove escrow from my account because I owned a house previously and the escrow actually paid me interest, but the company that we have now, the escrow does not pay me interest, and so why are they holding $7,000 and not paying me any interest on it? So I may just pay my homeowner's insurance and pay my property taxes myself. I don't need escrow to do it for me. So I think I may remove that so that I can start earning some interest on my money, because there's really no benefit in having escrow, and it will decrease our mortgage payment again, and then I can just save the other things in a sinking fund. Next, we have our truck, and this is one of the debts that we are hoping to pay off in the next month or two. We currently owe $9,000 on the truck, almost exactly. We were planning to pay extra towards it. We pay for this every other week is when our standard payments are, so it's about $600 a month. We paid a little bit extra at the beginning of the month, I think like $300, but as you can see, we plan to pay an extra like $3,000 or something towards the truck, and we didn't do that because we diverted that money towards the HSA. And so I think contributing to the HSA is going to take a little bit more of a priority than contributing to the truck for now. I think we pay about $20 in interest every 2 weeks, which isn't so bad because the interest rate is kind of low. It's 5.69, so it's only slightly higher than what we're getting in our high yield savings account. So we would like to pay it off, just because we don't like paying interest, but it's not like crushing us because the interest rate isn't too terrible. Our next debt is my retirement account loan. I took this out as a down payment on my house. I've paid off $15,000 to $20,000 of it already. This comes out of my paychecks. The interest rate is also really low. It's like 4.25, and all of that interest gets paid back to myself. However, we would like to pay this off in the next year, but if we have to delay it, that's fine. When I pay this back, it just is like an extra contribution to my retirement account, so I'm not super worried about paying this back extra early because it's not costing me really anything. And then our final debt are my husband's student loans, and the current payment is $382. These also have a very low interest rate. I think it's probably combined lower than 4%, but there are a couple that are above 4%, and so we actually kind of do pay a little bit extra towards them, even though this is our standard payment if we were doing the 10-year payment plan. I went over how we make our payments towards the student loans like at some point, but it's not really that important because we're not paying too much extra. I think we're only going to trim off a couple of months of the 10-year loan, so we may end up paying these off, but it's not a huge priority. I think the highest interest rate loans will be paid off in like 2 years or something, and then all the other ones are like below 3%. So finally, let's go over the sinking funds and the spending. So basically all of our spending comes out of these sinking funds. I don't really budget any of our variable spending just because it is so variable. But everything that we budgeted for each of the categories, we ended up contributing, with the exception of contributing $5.72 to miscellaneous, and that was just kind of like the rollover extra that we had left just to make it a zero-based budget. Every time we have like $5 or something extra, I put it in miscellaneous, and usually if we have a miscellaneous expense, that's fine. But at the end of the year, I'll roll that miscellaneous fund into whatever sinking fund seems to need it the most. And then the DCFSA is the dependent care flexible savings account or flexible spending account. I'm not really sure what it stands for, but this comes out pre-tax out of my paycheck. And so this is one of the ways that we are able to reduce our taxable income, I believe. We'll be contributing $5,000 over the course of the year, and then we'll use that $5,000 towards our daughter's daycare. I actually just submitted $600 for reimbursement, so we'll see if that goes through. And then we'll have a little bit extra in our budget for March to be able to spend that extra $600 of reimbursement. So now moving on to the spending in our accounts. I think we did a little bit better this month. We usually have the most trouble with grocery spending. As you can see at the very beginning of the month, we went to the grocery store 7 times before the 7th. That's pretty crazy. But we ended up only spending $303 in total for groceries, which is pretty good. I budget $350 towards our sinking fund. We went way over our budget last month because we placed a really big bulk order, which also included laundry detergent. That was like $100 of our order was laundry detergent, 5 gallons of it, so basically a lifetime supply. But we don't really have like a category for those kinds of household things. Our home sinking fund is for maintenance and upkeep and not really for like laundry detergent and dish soap and stuff, because we don't really buy those things very often. And like we don't really use any other kinds of disposable cleaning products. Like we don't use paper towels. We just use rags and washcloths. And I don't even know what kind of disposable household things do people use, because like I haven't been using them in years. It always surprises me when I go over to my parents' house and they're like using disposable things. And I was like, I didn't even think people still use these because I just haven't used them in forever. So I thought everyone was on the same page as me, but apparently not. So, I mean, this saves us a lot of money, and I don't even need a category for it because we barely ever buy anything for the household in that regard. Where was I? Groceries. Okay, so after groceries, I bought gas twice this month, so I ended up spending $56.60. I usually buy gas like every 3 or 4 weeks, so sometimes it falls twice in a month. I drive a plug-in hybrid, so I don't really use that much gas, even though I drive quite a bit for work. And then the other spending we had was for pets. I spent $27.55 on some food for them. I really need to schedule them a vet appointment. That's why we have such a big sinking fund built up for them, because they haven't gone to the vet this year. And then our last item of spending was in restaurants. We typically don't spend very much in restaurants, but this month we went on a Valentine's Day date, took our daughter out for the first time to a restaurant, and then I also ended up getting Chipotle at the end of the month because I had a coupon for free guac, and so I bought some chips, and that ended up being less than $3. So overall for restaurants this month, we spent $62.62. And then our last bit of spending, which is the reason why we drained our savings this month, was we paid off our roof. We had our roof replaced less than a year ago, and we took out an interest deferred loan, 0 interest for 12 months. It was called Same as Cash. And the total amount for replacing our roof, they had to update it because it was not up to code. They had to replace one of our skylights. The other 3 we got boarded over. They had to replace all of the decking underneath because it was rotting away. And then we opted to get, well, before we knew that the whole decking was needed to be replaced, we opted to get windows upstairs, all new windows. And so it would have been $10,000 less if we hadn't had that extra work that needed to be done. There was also a chimney thing. So they quoted us like $32,000 or something, which was why we were okay with getting the windows replaced, even though they didn't absolutely need it. but then they found all of the additional work that they needed to do, which is why it was $44,055 at the end, which was much more than we wanted to pay. So we really had to cut back last year so that we could save that up before the interest became due. And so that due date is either sometime in early March or sometime in early April. It wasn't quite clear, and so we just paid it all off in February so that we didn't risk accruing 20% interest on that. But that was basically all of our savings besides our emergency fund, which we didn't end up touching for the roof, which was good that we didn't have to do that. So let's take a look at what we budgeted for spending and what we actually spent. We were planning on paying 47.9% of our income towards debt. We ended up only putting 28.6%, and that was because we didn't contribute as much to the truck, because instead we put it towards savings. So whereas we were only planning to contribute 9.4% to savings, we ended up contributing 30% of our income to savings, which is pretty awesome that we were able to save at 30%. Our sinking funds were basically exactly what we budgeted, and so were our fixed expenses. It looks like they were slightly less, and I don't know, that may have been just that the taxes were slightly lower than what I budgeted originally. And then I just like to show this bar chart also. Our income was a little bit higher than what we budgeted, and then our savings was more than we budgeted, and our debt was less than we budgeted. So it's just another way of looking at it to give you a nice, quick, at a glance if you're on track. And speaking of at a glance, let's look at our annual summary and see where we are with that. So our annual budget is pretty similar to our monthly budgets, with about 42% going towards debt and 15% going towards savings. And our spending is pretty much right on track, again with the little bit of a difference in savings and debts. My budgeted versus actual bar chart is a little bit off because this has my March budget on it already, so I've already budgeted out how much we're expecting in our income and how much we're expecting for debt and expenses and sinking funds in March. So let's just take a look really quick at our debt payoff so far. So these are our balances for the month of March after we have made our payments, and it looks like we have paid off just over $6,000 worth of debt now, which is almost $2,000 from last month. So that is everything for my February recap. If you found this interesting, then please give me a like, as it really helps out my channel. And if you're not subscribed yet and you're interested in following along with my family's debt payoff journey and saving and investing, then please hit subscribe, because I would love to have you follow along. And let me know in the comments how your February went. If you had anything unexpected come up like we did, or if you got your tax refund and what you plan on doing with that. I love reading and responding to all of the comments and chatting here in this budgeting community. So thank you for being here.